the event of 3 weeks ago could be a precursor to a bigger situation if certain things are not done. And that will not be because the security cluster would have been caught napping, they would have been ready. But no matter the number of police and number of soldiers you deploy against 100 people, it cannot solve the problem. So the IMF, and people have read statistics, and I want to differ with some of the statistics, but it's fine. The IMF said South Africa is amongst the top leading in the inequality stakes, and this is the report they produced last year. And last year, October, they say 20% of the populations hold 68% of the income, whereas 40% of the population that is below, which is unfortunately majority Black and African, holds 77% of the income. And the unemployment rate, and the official statistic is that unemployment rate by Q1 of this year is 32.6%, and the minister responsible for Stats SA, so I'm quoting the Stats SA figures. And that number for youth between the ages of 15 to 34 years is 46.3%. This is Q1 of this year. So if majority of our people, the poor, remains unemployed, they earn a meager income, they go hungry, what is supposed to happen to a population? And I like what Zev said. He said, and I want to quote, that South Africa has been very good to the minorities. Imagine a Black child in KwaMashu, in Makwarera, in Langa, in Nyanga, in Soweto, and in Alexander, hearing Zev saying South Africa has been good to the minorities, whereas it has not been good to a Black child. What does that feel like? And it's good to make that acknowledgement, because when you make that acknowledgement, you start to say, how do I give back? Because, and I'm glad that we are meeting here with some of you. If there is a community, if there are communities that are entrepreneurial in this country, is this community that we are talking to today. The Hellenics, the Italians, the Portuguese, you've brought in the Lebanese and the Jews. And this is the most entrepreneurial of our communities in this country. So the question that I have in this discussion is to say, how do we bring your lived experience in entrepreneurship to create opportunities for the youth that are unemployed? How do you create, and not just youth, Black African youth in this country? Because the more we just talk about youth in general and not be specific to the group that is unemployed, we won't address the issue. Because what this situation has brought to us is to open our eyes to say, it's not government that's going to be a loser alone. It's also the private sector that is going to be a loser. And we have always said, no, this is ANC factional issues, this is the problem of government. And business claim to have come to the party, but reports that we have seen are saying majority of big business have kept their monies in reserves in their bank accounts, but they have not invested that in the country to create employment and opportunities for Black people, for women, and for young people in particular. So this is a question that we all have to say, how is business, big and small, in South Africa going to come to the party? How does the HIP Alliance as a community come to the party and say, in the communities where you reside, whether you are in KZN, whether you are in Gauteng, whether you are in Limpopo, whether you're in Cape Town, whether you are in the Eastern Cape, how do you come to the party in those communities and make sure that young women who are Black are supported to run businesses successfully? That when in their supply chains, value chains, and I know some, I think the Portuguese in the main, they run the corner shops. I grew up in buying in the corner shop of one of the Portuguese families. And I was saying, how do you make sure that you assist that young person who's running a spaza shop that it can grow to become another corner shop in another area? Because those are the fundamental things we must deal with. Because I see the cleaning campaigns, we can all clean, but that is not meaningful. What is meaningful is that how do we change the income levels of these people? How do we deal meaningfully with inequality? We can do donations, it's fine, but you can't donate everything. But also you don't give dignity to people when you donate. What you give dignity to is when you create a job that person will be able to work and an income, or you create an opportunity for that person to start their own business or support them to run their own business and make sure that their business thrives. And I understand the context of Zef, where it comes from, to say when they came through, when they were after the Holocaust and everything, and they came through, they were supported to make sure that the Lithuanian Jews, when they landed here, and any other Jewish community that when they landed here, and any other minority, they could survive. And the question is, how do we use that experience to support Black people, to support women, to support young people? Because we cannot continue to speak from our positions of comfort. We must really make the rubber must hit the tongue in meaningful ways and not in superficial ways. Because if we don't do it, we are sitting in a time bomb, if not worse. And when we go again, you are part of the largest, you may be the largest employers if we aggregate yourselves as communities, even in the small businesses that you run. The people that you employ in those shops of yours, the people that you employ in those businesses of yours, in those chains that you run, the network of businesses that you run. How can we account that those people are South African? And linked to that issue is the issue of racism. And I was baffled when I went to Soweto after the riots and everything. And the rule was they didn't attack Maponya Mall, though the community also defended it because it's a Black-owned business. But they went to attack Jabulani Mall and Protea Mall, and they say it's white monopoly capital. But it's owned by Mike Nkuna. It's an old man from Limpopo. I know him personally. And young people are asking, and somebody asked the very question here, to say we guarded those shopping centers, we guarded those malls, but what then? Because even the security in the shopping centers that majority white people run is not done. It's not by South Africans, Blacks, African in particular. It's done somehow. It's not even by the local community. Even if you go to a neighborhood that a business operates, a cleaning company is not a cleaning company from that township. And we're still saying the community came to the party. Yes, the community came to the party. So us as government, as business, what are we doing in exchange for to reward the community, but not to reward the community, but to say this South Africa belongs to all, not only in political sense, but also in economic sense. Because that's what we need to deal with. Because if we don't do that and we start to, Blacks will always remain the ones who beg, who receive donations, who receive handouts, and whites will remain the ones who give the handouts and who will go to for donations. We're not going to, this problem that we're dealing with today is not going to be to be resolved. Yes, there were opportunistic elements that went into that, but there will be a point. I was reading a report earlier about the hunger levels. Despite that's why the president and the governing party took a decision that we must reintroduce the 350 grant now, because families were sleeping hungry now, not tomorrow. Now they were sleeping hungry. Children are surviving by one meal which they get at school. That's why even a court ruled that even when schools are closed, children must go to school to have food. We cannot resolve that situation by donation. We can resolve that situation by assisting communities to build their own enterprises. And I'm talking like this freely because you are communities that have done that. So how do we take that experience, your lived experience, to go to my community in Makwarela, in Sibasa, in Thoyando, in Thulamela, in Bembe? How do we take that lived experience to say, okay, you can help put a vegetable garden which will sell food which will sell the vegetables to the school, to the spa shops that you own, and then so that I run my business. And when I'm selling the spinach from my garden to the spa that you own, or the cabbage to the spa that you own, or the Pick and Pay that you own, or the corner shop that you own, you can then you say, no, can we train you to run a business? This is profit and loss. This is how it's done. This is enterprise development. If you're doing this, this is how how you can aggregate your follow. And I'm just using that simple example to say, how do we contribute in a different manner? Because if we don't, the racism is going to entrench, because even when you are not racist, but whatever your attitude is, your effort will be deemed as demeaning because I'm sitting at a position of disadvantage. And because I'll always be lower to you because you are higher, because of your wealth that you have, and therefore you'll treat me as not as an equal, because I cannot be an equal when I'm lower in terms of income. I cannot be an equal when I'm not in the economic table or the table that we discuss all things that are important. And therefore that will translate as you being racist. And it will not be racism, but that will be interpreted as racism. So we must then deal with that, because we've got, historically, our country needs to deal with a whole lot of things. We need to address the challenges that were brought by inequality, by racism, by discrimination based on gender, on age, and all those things. But the fact that majority of black people do not own the economy. To date, almost 27 years later, the economy of South Africa still belongs to the minority. And we cannot sit here and be pleased. We cannot sit here and pepper through those cracks. We must say, how do we translate, how do we transform that economy so that we can bring those who have to come through? Not through corruption, not through theft, not through plundering of state resources, because we must deal with those things. But how do we build a society of equal? How do we make sure that that partnership is not a partnership at lip service? It's a partnership that says, how is a black woman empowered? Is a black youth empowered? Is a black man empowered? Is a disabled person empowered? Economically, not politically, economically. We must have those conversations. And let me finish off by saying on one thing that I want to talk about. Because this growth, or the South Africa, when it grows on its own, it becomes a magnet for the rest of the sister countries in the continent. So the growth and development of South Africa cannot be excluded or cannot be isolated from the growth and development of the rest of the continent. So the reindustrialization of South Africa must include the reindustrialization of the African continent. So as a department and government, we are planning to host an SMME summit for 20 major countries in the continent, but also in Southern Africa, SADC in particular, to participate and say, how do we develop a partnership to grow and match our SMME so that we can then harness the benefit of this market of 1.3 billion people. And I'm using this opportunity because the Portuguese, they have countries in the continent that they are dominant economically. The Italians, same. I don't know about the Hellenics, but I'm sure they're in the same category. The Jews are there, the Lebanese are there. How do you partner with us in terms of supporting, linking us with that network in these other countries? We'll share the names of the countries as soon as they're finalized. How do you link us, how do we support us to link up with this network of the other HIP alliances across the continent so that we can link them to the other SMMEs in the continent and develop particular hubs so that the growth of South Africa is not in isolation, because it will always attract those who are poor, those who are vulnerable from the rest of the continent. Therefore, we must make sure that South Africa does not grow alone. South Africa grows with others. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Minister. I really appreciate it. And I know you are pressed for time because you've got to leave at 8 o'clock. So do stay with us for a couple of questions. I did call the President, by the way. I did tell him you will be running a little bit late after 8 o'clock. So don't feel too bad if you stay a few extra minutes. But thank you very much, Minister. You know, there's no doubt that you have a very crucial portfolio that you have to play at the moment. But I'm looking at some of the questions, and, you know, one of the questions over here is, comes from Zolani. It's more of a comment as well as a question that he made earlier. And, you know, what actions need to be, let me get to his, he talks about the deep inequality, the poverty and the unemployment, which you've really covered. But Zolani says that a true recovery is dependent on government at all levels decisively dealing with corruption and redirecting resources towards improving the lives of the ordinary citizens. Now, with respect, Minister, you did mention and you painted a scenario which is the reality, the racism and all the other issues that we have. But how much accountability does the acting government take for where we find ourselves today? And I look at the backdrop of corruption, and I look at the mood out in the street where people are angry. They've seen these things happening. They believe that government is overspending, that they believe the resources aren't being channeled in the right direction. How much of a responsibility does the ANC and the ruling government take in where we find ourselves today. And let me remind you of the slogan that was painted back in 2014 that the ANC had in 2014, where it says a better life for all. And quite clearly, 27 years down the line, that isn't a better life for all. So how much accountability does your government take for where we are today? Because I don't believe you dealt it efficiently in your comments, Minister, with respect.
Thank you, Aki, for that question. I don't think we can take leave of absence from ourselves, and we cannot disassociate ourselves with whatever has happened in the past. But if you are sitting here in a South African, you know the effort that's being made to get rid of corruption, to make sure those who have been found wanting or found with their hands in the cookie jar are dealt with, irrespective of the level of the political position they hold, both in the governing party and also in government. That's why you've got prominent leaders of the ANC in court for corruption. That's why you've got former prominent government people in court for corruption. And it doesn't mean that when we're saying we're dealing with corruption, there will not be those who continue to attempt they think they're clever, they can beat the system, they'll be corrupt. There will be those who continue to attempt to do that, and they must be dealt with speedily. And that's the pace at which we are pushing ourselves to say, how fast can we move to deal with corruption? How fast can we, as it's detected, can it be dealt with immediately? That is one part. And for me, we cannot go back and say, no, we are not responsible. It has happened under our watch, whether as an individual, as Kumbuzo, whether I was there or not, it's immaterial. I've been a member of the ANC since I was born, and people ask me why. I was born in a womb of an ANC woman. So I've been a member of the ANC since I was born. I've been in the public service for long, though I went into entrepreneurship. But bottom line is that we are dealing with corruption. And the issue is that the depth and the extent to which corruption pervaded society in South Africa. Because even now, wherever you go, small things, people want to see me, Aki, somebody who say, no, I'll introduce you to Kumbuzo, but, can we talk? You understand, that kind of thing. And that is corruption in its own. Even in business, that it happened. But we are dealing with corruption in this time. And the other challenge that the contra question would be, how is private sector dealing with the corruption amongst its midst? And we use the term, and when I was a few years ago, we used to say, when it's black people, it's corruption. When it's white people, it's white collar crime. And so if we don't name it the same and want to treat it differently, corruption is corruption. It doesn't matter whether it's done by a black man or a black woman or a white man or a white woman, whether it's done in the private sector or in the public sector. It's corruption, it must be dealt with. And are we happy with the pace at which some of the prosecutions take place? Obviously not. There can be room for improvement, and we are rebuilding capacity for that. We all know that capacity was depleted over a period of time, and we need to rebuild that capacity. And some of the decisions you can throw back to the governing party, but the governing party is also cleaning itself and correcting its own part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Minister, you've got such an important portfolio. I mean, take away you're the acting minister in the presidency, but the small business development of this country is really the energy that is going to drive this economy forward. Do you have the right resources as Minister of Small Business Development? And what in your mind needs to be done to re-energize this particular economy where we find ourselves today? Because it is through small business that's really going to catapult us to get us into that trajectory of growth again. So tell us about your department and what you are planning to get this economy back on track. You're on mute, Minister. There we go. We can hear you now.
Are you sure?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm saying that, do we have the right resources? No, we don't have enough resources for the work at hand. And the resources is not even about the national fiscus. The national fiscus does not even scratch the surface in terms of the investment or the allocation that is made for small business development. And it doesn't even have to be made to the department per se. It can be made to a plethora of departments that assist with that. If you conglomerate the amount of money available for small business development support, it's not enough in government. But is the private sector coming to the party? It was not. But we have started to see some form of improvements. The supply value chains are being opened up now. The shelves are being available for those products that are manufactured by SMMEs. But we could go further. And I'm saying some of the products in our shops, some of the things that we stock, they could be made in South Africa wholly by small businesses. Do we have the skill set in the country? Yes, we've got a serious skill set of people in the country. If trained, if given an opportunity, if nurtured and mentored, and if incubated, they can be big businesses. They can be small businesses that are very successful. In other countries, small businesses contributing between 40 and 60% of employment. But in South Africa, it's only 10%. Why? And in other countries, small businesses, they survive in their first year. In South Africa, you have to be there for 5 years for you to be able to have a chance to survive. Why? Because us who are in the business sector are not holding and reaching out to mostly the township and rural enterprises, but also the emerging businesses from urban areas that are youth-owned, that are women-owned, because those are the type of conversation we must start to have.
Thank you, Minister. Paul Ash from the Sunday Times is asking the practical steps. And I guess we don't really have time on our side this time. The economy is really in the doldrums at the moment. We've got to do something pretty urgent. What is the government doing, and what is your department doing right now with immediate effect to resolve this employment crisis that we face in our country?
So in the Department of Small Business Development, or in the economic cluster, we started to realize that the fiscus on its own will not fund the gap that is required to address the challenges of small business, because there must be the job creators. So we've started to reach out to businesses. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, I spoke with the businesses that are associated to the American Chamber of Businesses to say to them, how do you partner us to make more products that are made in South Africa on your shelves and also taken by you to the export markets? So we've put practically to say, how do we work together? And we've got a program that we are launching in the few weeks about how do we enhance the manufacturing program of the Department of Small Business Development to make sure that SMMEs can manufacture their products. But secondly, for those products that are on the shelves, how do we make sure that they've got volume and capacity? Because the quality is no longer an issue. The department has sorted out the quality. But also in the township and rural enterprises, if you go to the township areas, you find your Pick n Pays, your Spars, your USafe, ShopRite checkers invading the township, making it difficult for a spaza shop to come and operate a spaza shop. That was 1,000 rand. Now you must operate a spaza shop of Pick n Pay, which is 1 million rand. So the conversation has turned to say, how do we get these large retailers to partner with those spaza shops, keep them either technology enablement and stocking and everything, and make sure that they are viable businesses, and they do not have to then put a Pick n Pay in a village or as you save in a village. There will be a spaza shop that is owned by Madlamini, by Vonya Chisebe, by John and Peter and Masindi, to make sure that they run and become successful. But how do we give opportunities? For instance, we are supporting motor mechanics and panel beaters to service cars, because 1.7 million cars in this country, and they are outside of warranty and they are outside of insurance cover. But how do we make sure that your car, Aki, is
I think we've lost the minister there. Are you still with us, Minister? She was talking about my car, and I got concerned about my car. Minister, are you there? All right. It appears that we have lost the minister, which is such a pity. Minister, are you there? Are you able to hear us? Can the rest of the speakers hear me? If you can turn on your microphones and your cameras on. It's a great pity that we lost the minister there. I really wanted to, ask a final question of the minister to take us into her confidence, because she is the acting minister in the presidency, and just understand where the president is and where the president's thinking is. I just want to see if the minister is back with us, if we can let the minister in. There you are, Minister. Thank you. I know you've got to go to a very quick meeting, but take us into your confidence, and obviously you can't really divulge anything. How is the president feeling? How's the president assessing the situation in our country that we find ourselves in? He's a very optimistic man. He's been very decisive. I've got to say, I've got to give him that kind of credit. But, there's a lot of criticism about certain appointments within cabinet. I don't have to talk about the current situation that the Ministry of Health finds itself in, but the president has come under quite a considerable amount of criticism. And there's also a rumor of a cabinet reshuffle, which is perhaps what your meeting at 8 o'clock is about. I don't wish you to confirm that, but take us into the confidence of what the president is thinking and what the mood of the president is right now, and what the president is going to do to take us out of the mess that we're in right now. And many have criticized South Africa, telling us there's a leadership void in this country. Do we have a leadership void? Is President Ramaphosa the right person to guide us through this?
Thanks, Aki, for that question. By the way, my meeting is not with the president. He has no control over that meeting. And it's not about a cabinet reshuffle. That remains his sole prerogative. And we don't have a leadership void. That's why you have me here communicating, because he has dispatched us to communicate with communities like yourself. And you see government at work. I'm sure the speakers were very clear to say government, even though we were slow, when we took over, when we came back big and strong. And with that, the president is an optimistic man, but not only optimistic man, he's also a realistic man. He has tasked us in the economic cluster to say, well, how do we quickly resolve the challenges that are there? How do we make sure that we forge those partnerships, not only strategically, but meaningfully, to make the right impact? How do we reorganize ourselves as government for the right impact for the communities? But how do we rebuild better? How do we rebuild stronger as a community?
Okay, Minister, thank you very, very much. I'm going to take every minute I get with you, because it's not often we get to see you. What can we as a community do? What should we as a community be doing to help the government, to help this country get out of the current economic situation we find ourselves in?
For one, you are an entrepreneurial community in the name. So my question is, how do the communities that reside close to you or closest to you, how do you make sure you mentor small businesses in those areas? How do you make sure you mentor young people in those areas to either start their own businesses, but to find their jobs, to find jobs? How do you retrain them to become, to be meaningful contributors in that society? So for me, the next conversation we need to have, I need a report back. So Stravos likes slides. Maybe in the next slides, he'll be reporting back as the chairperson of the HIP Alliance, that the HIP Alliance community in Durban, the HIP Alliance community in Eastern Cape, in Limpopo, across the country, this is the number of young entrepreneurs they are mentoring. This is the number of spaces they've opened in their businesses or in the supply chains for small businesses to use Black-owned, women-owned, youth-owned, in that to get their businesses to prosper. And how do you just avail opportunities that you have access to? How do you support those young people to be gainfully employed? How do you contribute to their training?
Minister, I've got another 30 seconds with you. Do we need to change our financial model in this country? And Pradesh has asked that question. Do we need to relook at how we see the financial model of this country?
I don't know whether it's the financial model per se, but we need to relook the funding model in this country of what do we fund, how do we prioritize that, how do we use the money? For instance, if we have to go, like now there's the IMF drawing rights that are in, if we go and draw some money from the IMF, 50 billion or whatever the amount that we're allowed to draw, if we go and draw that amount, X amount from the IMF, how do we invest it into productive capital? But how do you use the enterprise development programs of private sector to match that amount so that it can go a long way, instead of being desperate in our approach, but we partner together. And partnering together meaning, if I have R1, you bring another R1, or Aspen, the employer of Stavros, brings another R1, and we extend that R2 to make sure that we can at least reach 2 people instead of us going to the same person all over again. So that model must change. But also, because there are funding pots that are sitting. We need to be very creative, even in the National Treasury, in government, in terms of our policy, but also in private sector, to say, how do we avail those funding envelopes on the key pots that are there for us to tap in, not necessarily government, but to contribute to the rebuilding, to make sure that women are included, who are majority of society, they are included in economic participation.
I think women and where women finds ourselves in the country at the moment is one of the most dire situations we have. And I think that's a separate discussion altogether, and I'm very glad you touched on it, Minister. Minister, thank you very much for your time. Just in 30 seconds, what keeps you awake at night?
What keeps me awake is waking up 10 years later and having to explain myself to my children that I was a minister and did not make the impact that brought equality in South Africa, that made that a black child is equal in any respect to a white child in South Africa, that South Africa is an equal society. That's what keeps me awake at night.
Minister, bless you. We wish you luck. Please give the President our best regards. You certainly have a very, very tough portfolio. I don't wish to be in your place, but it seems to me that you understand what needs to be done. You have the support of the HIP Alliance and people that are on here. I think we all need to roll our sleeves out and realistically look at where we are in this country before we move forward in any way and address the inequality. Thank you, Minister. We wish you well, and please give the President our best wishes.
Thank you for having me, and I'll pass your regards. Thank you.
Thank you.